being here today, and thank you, Mary Lou and Clyde. The first piece I'm going to begin with is a transcription of Bach, Jesu, of Joy of Man's Desiring. The transcription was done by an English pianist, Myra Hess, and when World War II happened, she was in England, and they could no longer hold concerts at night because of the Blitzkrieg, the German bombers ahead. So she started organizing lunchtime concerts.
Just like this. Yeah.
So I thought it was very fitting to begin our concert with this transcription that she did. The next piece is the single longest. It's an entire sonata by Beethoven, one of his late sonatas. He wrote this when he was completely deaf, and I have a couple other notes on it that I'd like to share with you. 1821 was the actual date that he wrote this piece. Beethoven would have seen large-scale events during his life. He was in the Enlightenment period. He saw the birth of America as a nation, the French Revolution, and how disappointing that was. He thought Napoleon was going to be a great hero, and he turned out to be just another power-hungry monarch. Beethoven also saw an unfulfilled desire for human love. He never was married, and yet his music still has so much hope, especially this late sonata. It begins in E major, the middle movement is in E minor, and the final theme and variation movement goes back to E major. Since I didn't have time at the beginning, I would like to read a verse from Bach's Jesu, Joy of Man's Desiring, and I think the beauty of the Beethoven sonata really captures these words well as well. Through the way where hope is guiding, hark, what peaceful music rings, where the flock in thee confiding drink of joy from deathless springs. Theirs is beauty's fairest pleasure, theirs is wisdom's holiest treasure. Thou dost ever lead thine own in the love of joys unknown.
It's really interesting to hear this recital, a beautifully planned out recital. Aubrey, thank you. A recital of works for the piano by pianists. Prokofiev was a very fine pianist, but before him was Beethoven. Beethoven was, in his day, actually lauded as the best pianist in all of Europe. Johann Sebastian, what was the guy's first name? Bach was a brilliant keyboard artist. The piano hadn't been invented yet, but Bach performed on the piano a lot, or on the early keyboard. So organ, harpsichord, early versions of the piano. It's wonderful to see you tackling this and bringing out what composers such as Beethoven. What was he thinking? What was going through that guy's mind as he was writing? It started out so beautifully and ethereally. It sounded almost like impressionistic music. It sounded like Debussy, who was another fine pianist. And then the madness sets in, and the ebbs and flows. Really, really beautiful. Same kind of thing happens with Prokofiev. The second piano concerto is a real tour de force, and I'm delighted that we're doing the whole thing. I thought at first when Aubrey had won the competition, she had played only the first movement, and I thought, well, you know, the whole piece is really brilliant, and she knows it very, very well, all of our discussions about it. So I think what will be really important for us to do right now, we're not going to play a concerto on this lovely little recital at this time, but we'll talk about the 4 different movements. What, you say? 4 movements? Yes, 4 movements in this piano concerto. Brahms wrote a little piano concerto that had 4 movements, and it was like 45 minutes long. This one is about 30 minutes long, and 4 very different moods. The first movement is the longest. It starts out a very innocuous little boom, 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 boom. It's innocent in its beginning. It starts out andantino, which is a lovely little walking, moving forward, before, again, like Beethoven, the madness sets in. What do you like about the first movement?
The first movement, again, it begins very calmly, but it still kind of has an undercurrent and a little bit of unsettling harmony. You think, where is this journey going to take us?
Yeah.
And
well, a lot of Prokofiev's music is very unsettling. It's not necessarily meant to be pretty. It's meant to be very expressive and very dynamic. And when we use the word dynamic, sometimes you think dramatic, but in many cases, it's very calm, very wandering, very meandering, almost lost, but then he brings us in. It's really quite stunning. You want to play a little bit for us? A little bit of the first one? I've asked her to think of a minute or 2 or 3 or 5 of each of the movements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll just give you, this is kind of what the opening sounds like, and then I'm going to give you a treat today. I'm going to play the cadenza from the first movement, which is one of the reasons this concerto has such a menacing reputation among pianists. It's uncommon for such a huge cadenza to be on the first movement.
It's 5 minutes long, with the pianist just by herself while the orchestra sits there and says, oh, we need a break. Thank you for taking over for a little while, then we'll join you again. hot or is it just me? Yeah, you know, it's almost like we don't really even need the orchestra. Maybe we just give the orchestra that piece off and let Audrey play the whole thing. Yeah, it's brilliant.
We have board members sitting here.
And so what I really love about that is how gently and quietly it starts. And I thought, when I first saw Aubrey's picture, when Stephen and I were discussing this program, and I thought, okay, this is a big, strong, solid piece of music. I don't know who this soloist is going to be, but you know, the last time I did this, it was with somebody who weighed about 150 pounds more than Aubrey does, and a big, strong man who just tore it up. I think he broke a string at one point, and I thought, well, can Aubrey do this? And she convinced me. If she hadn't already convinced you after the beautiful Bach and then the opening of the Beethoven, I'm convinced. But she throws bales of hay for a living. She's been growing up on a farm. She rides horses. This ain't no girly girl here. The second movement is entitled Scherzo, and it's kind of a misnomer because the original, the Italian translation of the word scherzo is joke. So it's a funny little thing, right? No, this is no joke. The tempo is indicated as vivace, and when you look at the score, I mean, I should show you, anybody who would like to come and see my score, the page is just filled with little black notes. And it doesn't stop. It is absolutely relentless for about 3 minutes. So you want to play a little bit of this scherzo? You like the scherzo?
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It's kind of like the Prokofiev toccata that I did, which was my very first time playing Prokofiev, and it's the same thing. The only rhythmic value that you have in the whole piece is 16th notes and no rest. So it's just chugging along the whole time. But with orchestra, it's so exciting because you have all these, you know, the flutes coming in and then the string. And
We'll stay steady if you promise to.
Okay.
Of that, and the orchestra's just scampering along, going, "Where are we? Are we still together?" So we play about half the number of notes that you do. The next movement is a bit of a relief from that. It's actually called intermezzo. It's a gently flowing, a little bit more song-like, which you might expect in a symphony. First movement, big and strong. Second movement, dance-like. Third movement of a symphony is almost always a ballad or some kind of a song affair. This one's not really a song. It's more of a relief from what we've just done in the second movement, the scherzo. You don't want to play any. Are you going to save some of that?
I kind of was planning on just saving that for the concerto performance.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is very impish, and you know, it starts off with the big brass, and then it has these little skipping. I think it sounds like cave trolls, or you know.
Well, and it kind of reminds me of Prokofiev's most famous piece of music. Everybody know what that is? Peter and the Wolf. Yeah, the final, which is another 20 years later. He didn't do this for another 20 years. it's so interesting that finally we get something that we can hang our hats on. There's actually a bit of a melody, there's some song-like things that we can hear and understand. So the fourth movement then, you say? There are 4 movements in this concerto. It really, I keep harping on that because it is very unusual for a concerto to be so well structured and to have 4 different movements. The last movement is impish, you say. It's marked, the tempo is allegro tempestoso, or in Italian, tempestoso. And you have to do this with your hand when you say it in Italian. And Prokofiev, of course, being Ukrainian-born, Russian-raised, he spoke a lot of different languages, and composers often used the language of love. I mean, Italian, which is we consider. They used Italian terms, French terms, occasional Latin terms to describe their music. So, tempestoso. I wonder what that means. It's going to be stormy and driving.
Yeah, it is, and it's very exciting. But in the middle, there's this beautiful, it sounds like a Russian, derived folk melody, and this is, I think, the best melody in the whole concerto. And I'm actually going to start there in the middle, and then it grows, and what starts off as simple just is a Cossack heartbeat, really strong and powerful. Then we have some more exciting things and really pretty arpeggiation before coming back to that opening tempestuoso. And it just ends there. There's a double glissandi up to the top, and then it ends like the performer is jumping off a cliff. So very dramatic ending.
If it doesn't go well, maybe we all will.
you will not hear this piece played by anyone else, which I think I've never had a piece like this. Robert asked me to play this piece for his senior composition recital. We were both students at the Master's University, and of course I agreed, and I misjudged its complexity. I've played for other senior composition recitals, and usually for undergrad, I have to spend some time, but they're not usually extremely difficult, not like the works that I usually play. So when I started looking at the score a couple weeks before the recital, I said, oh dear, I should have started on this sooner. So Robert found somebody else to perform it because I like to perfect pieces. I don't like to pick them up in 2 weeks. And yet I felt bad that I had told him I could do it and wasn't able to. So I wrote a poem myself after this experience, and Robert was very gracious, and I thought, I'm going to still learn the piece, and I want to perform it because I think it's a marvelous piece, and usually if a piece is so easy that I could learn in 2 weeks, it's not worth bringing to concerts, usually for me. And so I thought this piece, it has potential for me to play in a concert, and here we are. But this is the poem that I wrote. I saw him one morning, the blackbird, and thought I could quickly capture him. But alas, my picture was only an image as deceptive as his glossy black form. As the shadows which lie about him like cells of a jail, so did many duties and cares fall over me, ever barring him from my calculating eye. And I wondered, were those cells which eventually barred him from my grasp real or a fragment of my own shattered imagination? Even now, through the shifting shadows, I still look to the greater light, who may be pleased to shine through the darkness and grant me many more ways of looking at the blackbird. Then at last the day will come when I shall feel the pleasure of holding the clever creature in my own possession. In that day, the sun will shine upon me ever brighter, and I will let the blackbird fly away to the praise of craftsman and maker. To the praise of God's grace, that day has arrived. Blackbirds rest within my reach, ready to show its manifold perspectives through the minds of each one of you observers. For those whose minds have been open to the hopeful realities of sanctified imagination, let us rejoice to see many more blackbirds spread their wings in flight. The very last piece I'm playing for you today is a wedding song, originally written by Schumann for his soon-to-be wife, Clara. I just had the pleasure of witnessing my beautiful red-haired cousin get married just a couple weeks ago in Carpinteria. And when I play this piece and I read the lyrics, it just makes me think and meditate on the love Christ has for his church and the day when he comes back for his own, and that will be the marriage supper of the Lamb. I guess I can say that being in a church, and my last name is Church. So. But I play this piece as a love song to Jesu, Jesus, lover of my soul, thinking on these words that are written for the piece. You my soul, you my heart, you my rapture, oh you my pain, you my world in which I live, my heaven you, to which I aspire, oh you my grave, into which my grief forever I've consigned. You are repose, you are peace, you are bestowed on me from heaven. Your love for me gives me my worth. Your eyes transfigure me in mine. You raise me lovingly above myself, my guardian angel, my better self.
She just finished her program with 2 major encores. Those are major encore pieces. Do you have a little something?
Okay, I was not prepared for this, but
Well, you have repertoire, so sure. It looks like they don't want to let you go. So just something short there.
all right. Well, we've been talking enough about Liszt. Why don't we hear some Liszt? La Campanella.